Marcellus Williams was executed on September 24, 2023. He was pronounced dead at 6:06 p.m. local time. The execution took place at the Eastern Reception, Diagnostic and Correctional Center in Bonne Terre, Missouri. Williams had been on death row for over 2 decades. He was convicted in 2001 for the 1998 murder of Felicia Gayle. Gayle was a newspaper reporter. Williams maintained his innocence until his death. The execution proceeded despite appeals for clemency. Prosecutors and even the victims' families supported these appeals. They argued that Williams may have been wrongly convicted. His case raised serious questions about the death penalty. It highlighted concerns about potential miscarriages of justice in the United States. Williams's execution sparked outrage and sadness. His supporters saw it as a tragic failure of the justice system. They argued that his case demonstrated the flaws in capital punishment. The execution renewed the debate about the death penalty in America. It forced a national conversation about its morality and fairness. Marcellus Williams was convicted of murder in 2001. The state of Missouri accused him of killing Felicia Gayle during a robbery. The prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. There was no physical evidence linking Williams to the crime scene. The case hinged on the testimonies of individuals who claimed to have heard Williams confess. The prosecution presented a narrative of a robbery gone wrong. They argued that Williams targeted Gayle for her money. They painted a picture of a desperate and dangerous individual. However, the defense maintained that Williams was innocent. They argued that the prosecution's case was weak and unreliable. They pointed to inconsistencies in the witness testimonies. Despite the lack of physical evidence, the jury found Williams guilty. He was sentenced to death. The verdict and sentence shocked and angered many. They believed that the prosecution had failed to prove Williams's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They argued that the death penalty was a disproportionate punishment given the lack of concrete evidence. In the years following Williams' conviction, doubts about his guilt grew stronger. New evidence emerged that cast further suspicion on the prosecution's case. Forensic experts questioned the reliability of the witness testimonies. They argued that the witnesses may have been coerced or influenced by law enforcement. The lack of physical evidence continued to plague the case. No DNA evidence linked Williams to the crime. Additionally, evidence emerged suggesting that the prosecution may have withheld exculpatory evidence. This evidence, if disclosed, could have potentially exonerated Williams. The growing doubts about Williams's guilt led to calls for clemency. Legal experts, activists, and even some former prosecutors urged the state of Missouri to reconsider his death sentence. They argued that executing a potentially innocent man would be a grave injustice. The calls for clemency grew louder as the execution date approached. Section 4. Legal appeals and the Supreme Court's decision. Marcellus Williams's legal team fought tirelessly to overturn his conviction. They filed numerous appeals arguing that his trial was flawed and that he was denied a fair chance to prove his innocence. They challenged the reliability of the witness testimonies, the lack of physical evidence, and the possibility of prosecutorial misconduct. The appeals process was long and arduous. Williams's case bounced between state and federal courts for years. Each appeal brought a glimmer of hope, but ultimately ended in disappointment. The courts, for the most part, upheld his conviction and sentence. In a last-ditch effort, Williams' attorneys appealed to the United States Supreme Court. They asked the court to grant a stay of execution, allowing time for further review of the case. However, the Supreme Court declined to intervene. The decision was a devastating blow to Williams and his supporters. Section 5. A microcosm of the death penalty debate. The case of Marcellus Williams became a focal point in the debate over capital punishment in America. His execution reignited discussions about the morality, fairness, and effectiveness of the death penalty. It forced the nation to confront the uncomfortable possibility that innocent people could be executed. Opponents of the death penalty pointed to Williams' case as a prime example of the system's flaws. They argued that his execution would be a miscarriage of justice, highlighting the irreversible nature of capital punishment. They emphasized the lack of physical evidence and the potential for error in the judicial process. Proponents of the death penalty maintained that it serves as a just punishment for heinous crimes. They argued that the death penalty deters crime and provides closure for victims' families. They insisted that safeguards are in place to prevent the execution of innocent people. Section 6. Lingering questions and the pursuit of justice. The execution of Marcellus Williams left behind a legacy of unanswered questions and a profound sense of injustice. Despite his claims of innocence and the doubts surrounding his case, he was put to death by the state of Missouri. His execution served as a stark reminder of the fallibility of the justice system. The fight for justice, however, did not end with Williams's death. His supporters vowed to continue seeking answers and accountability. They demanded a thorough investigation into the handling of his case, hoping to uncover any wrongdoing or misconduct. The case of Marcellus Williams stands as a cautionary tale about the death penalty and the fragility of justice. It is a story of a man who maintained his innocence until his last breath, a story that continues to resonate long after his execution.